There is a village in Japan where a dog waited. Every single day for nearly 10 years, he returned to the same train station at the same hour and waited for a man who would never come back. We know the story of Hachiko. Most of us dismiss it as loyalty, as habit, as the beautiful simplicity of an animal that couldn't understand what happened. But what if that explanation is wrong? What if the question isn't whether dogs are too simple to understand death, but whether they understand it in a way so different from ours that we've been asking the wrong question all along? Scientists used to believe that grief, in any meaningful sense, was uniquely human, that it required something dogs couldn't possibly possess, a concept of permanent absence, the idea that someone is gone forever. But over the last 2 decades, something has shifted in the science, and what researchers are finding is both stranger and more moving than anyone expected. To understand it, we need to go somewhere most documentaries don't. We need to go inside the dog's mind. The first thing you have to know is that a dog does not experience time the way you do. When you think about the future, your prefrontal cortex lights up. You imagine scenarios that haven't happened. You run simulations. You picture your own absence from the world. Neuroscientists call this mental time travel, and for a long time it was considered one of the pillars of human consciousness. Dogs show far less evidence of this capacity. They live, in a very real neurological sense, closer to the present moment than we do. And here is where it gets fascinating, because that means when a dog loses someone they love, they don't sit with the abstract knowledge that this person is dead.
They don't construct narratives about mortality. They don't intellectualize. What they experience, according to the best current evidence, is something raw, more immediate, and in some ways, possibly more overwhelming. They experience an absence that makes no sense. Think about what a person means to a dog, neurologically. Your dog has been mapping you for years. Your scent, which to a dog is exponentially more complex and informative than imagine, tells them your emotional state, your health, your identity, your location. You are not just a visual presence. You are a biochemical signature embedded in every room you've ever entered. When you die, that signature doesn't vanish immediately. It lingers on your clothes, your furniture, your pillow. For a dog, the world still smells like you, and yet you don't come. This is the contradiction the dog must live inside. Every sensory cue says, this person exists, but the experience says, this person is not here. In 2016, a study published in PLOS One surveyed the owners of over 400 dogs who had lost a companion animal in the home. The results were striking. The majority of dogs showed behavioral changes consistent with what we would recognize as grief: reduced appetite, increased vocalization, decreased activity, disrupted sleep, a tendency to search the environment. But here's what the study couldn't answer, and what makes this genuinely mysterious. Were the dogs grieving the loss of their companion, or were they responding to the grief of the humans around them? Because dogs are extraordinarily sensitive to human emotional states. Studies by ethologist Alexandra Horowitz and others have shown that dogs track our facial expressions, our body language, our hormonal changes.
They smell differently. They move differently. They hold their bodies differently. The dog is living in an emotional atmosphere that has fundamentally altered. So when a dog starts to search the house, to whine at the door, to lie in unusual places, is it mourning? Or is it trying to understand why its entire world has shifted? The honest answer, right now, is we don't know. And that uncertainty is itself one of the most fascinating things about dogs. But there are cases that push harder against the simpler explanation. Zoologist Barbara King, in her landmark study of animal grief, documents dogs who exhibited mourning behavior even when their human owners showed no visible distress. Cases where a dog lost a companion while the human family remained emotionally stable, and still the dog searched, withdrew, changed. And then there's the wolf comparison. Because dogs didn't emerge from nothing. They descend from wolves, and wolves are pack animals with deeply documented social bonds. Wild wolves have been observed remaining near the body of a pack member for extended periods. Howling increases. Behavior changes. Some researchers hesitantly use the word mourning. If wolves, with their ancient social architecture, show these responses, then dogs, shaped by 15,000 years of even deeper emotional attunement to social bonds, may have inherited and amplified something. Not a human understanding of death, something older, and possibly something deeper. Here is what the neuroscience can tell us, carefully. Dogs possess a limbic system, the brain's emotional core, that is functionally homologous to ours, the same structures, the same neurochemistry.
Oxytocin, cortisol, dopamine, the molecules of attachment and loss, operate in dogs in measurably similar ways to how they operate in us. When a dog bonds with someone, that bond is neurochemically real. When that person disappears, the neurochemical disruption is real. What we cannot say, with scientific honesty, is whether a dog has the cognitive representation of death, the concept, the category, the understanding that absence is permanent. What we can say is this: they experience loss, and loss in a brain wired for attachment is not a small thing. Now, return to Hachiko. For 9 years and 9 months, he returned to Shibuya Station every afternoon, every day that his owner had once returned. The standard explanation is conditioning. Hachiko had learned that his owner arrived at that hour. He was simply executing a learned behavior, waiting for a reward that no longer came. But here is what that explanation quietly glosses over. Hachiko stopped eating normally. He became visibly thinner. He accepted food from strangers at the station, people who recognized him and brought offerings. But he was changed. The conditioning theory says this is a dog running a program. The emerging behavioral science says this is a dog in a state of chronic, unresolved stress, an attachment system activated with no possibility of resolution, a bond with nowhere to go. Which of those feels more true to you? Perhaps the most profound thing the science reveals is this: dogs may not understand death conceptually, but they may feel the loss of the dead more completely than we allow ourselves to believe. Without language, they cannot narrate their grief. Without abstraction, they cannot explain it to themselves.
They cannot reach the cognitive stage we call acceptance, because acceptance requires understanding the permanence of what happened. They may simply wait, search, carry the activation of a bond that has no answer. Whether that is more or less painful than human grief is a question we cannot answer, but it is not nothing. And this brings us to the deepest mystery of all, one the science has barely begun to touch. Is there anything in a dog's experience that corresponds to what happens after loss? Do dogs dream of the dead? We know they dream. REM sleep in dogs is well established, and the neural firing patterns during canine sleep are consistent with the replay of waking experience. What experiences replay in the mind of a dog who has lost someone? We have no way to know. Do dogs over time integrate the loss? The behavioral studies suggest most do. The searching behavior diminishes, the appetite returns. Whether that constitutes something like healing or simply the fading of an unanswered signal is one of the genuinely open questions of animal cognition. We began with a dog waiting at a train station, and perhaps the deepest truth is not that Hachiko was too simple to understand death. Perhaps it's that he understood loss in the only way his mind allowed, completely, physically, without narrative, without consolation, just the daily return to the place where love had last made sense. The science of what dogs feel is still young. The questions outnumber the answers, and every answer so far has only revealed how much more there is to understand. Because the more carefully we look at the inner world of dogs, the less ordinary they become.